to the Optimized Lawfirm Podcast, where we talk about how to run a more profitable and enjoyable law firm. My name is Patrick Carver. I'll be your host today, and I'm the owner of Constellation Marketing. We help hungry law firm owners transcend seven figures and gain total ROI clarity on their marketing. So I'm very pleased to be joined by Margarita Eberline today. And she is the founder of Marketing Boss and offers coaching, teaching, training law firms through her fractional chief marketing officer services and workshops. And you can also book her for your next speaking event. So welcome to our humble podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for the warm welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we met through a client that we both share and work with. And, I just thought, when we started talking, we kind of shared a vision or an idea of how important not only attribution is, but really the intake process, I think, is what we really bonded over during that first call. And I want to get into that, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about Marketing Boss, what you're doing, right now, and how you help law firms.
Awesome. Yeah. So we at Marketing Boss aim to disrupt the marketing space for law firms. There's a flaw in the system that we aim to address. And the flaw is that most lawyers, they buy marketing services without really fully understanding what it is that they're buying and how it's supposed to work. And a lot of the times, even the best of vendors have their hands full already with executing tactics, and there's a missing link in between the owner and their sales objectives and the vendor's actual execution. And so we come into that space in the middle. So I like to describe us as like the realtor, right? That helps you buy the house, but we don't necessarily sell you the house. There are so many good marketing companies out there, and there's also really bad ones. And if you're a lawyer, you are probably not going to be able to tell the difference because they're already good at marketing themselves. And so at Marketing Boss, we're marketing experts, we're data analysts, and we're coaches. And so we come in and we help guide those decisions with data and with tactics. And we don't get involved necessarily in the execution ourselves. We're not an agency. We don't have a team or anything like that. We use whatever your existing team is. And it's really nice because we've come into situations, for example, where a lawyer will say to us, oh, our marketing team's not working. They're not doing a good job. And we'll get in and we'll audit what's happening. And we'll tell the lawyer, no, you know what? Your PPC vendor's actually getting you pretty good leads. We audited the campaign. The keywords are on point. The ads make sense. They're promising exactly what you do. Your brand everything's on brand. And guess what? Your office is not picking up the phone. And when they do pick up the phone, they're not nice, or they're not qualifying properly. And so that's, one of the fun places where we can get in as the middle person, right? Because it's one thing when your PPC vendor says, oh, it's not my team, it's your team at the front office that's not doing what they need to do with the leads. And then the person, your admin or your secretary or your intake person is going to be like, they're crazy. They're just not wanting to do a good job. Like, we've been into all that drama. And so then we come in and we're like, look, we don't work for them. We work for you. We're telling you, we need to work at the office on qualifying
right.
these and connecting with them and doing what's called to get them off the market, right? With law firms, we always have two objectives when it comes to sales and intake. Is we want to connect in a meaningful way so that they want to work with us and establish value, but we also want to get them off the market. Because as you know, especially with PPC, you have people that are not sold on your law firm. They're just kicking tires. They're calling around to see how they feel. And if your person, even if it's a non-legal, like they started yesterday, is warm, friendly, connects, ask them the right questions and make them feel like, hey, I called the right place, you can take them off the market. And even if they don't sign up within a week or, 2 weeks or even months, you got that lead, you got that ROI. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I feel like you could be the co-founder of my business idea I've had in a long time, which is a retreat for frustrated law firm owners after they've been working with a bad marketing company and to try and come through there. But I think, what instantly I thought, made so much sense is that, I think there's good marketing companies and good good law firms, and just sometimes there's, not enough time in the day to really like have those conversations about getting to the bottom of what actually is the issue. And so both sides are overworked and don't have a limited amount of time. And so sometimes you have to, you're kind of making these like gut level decisions about, oh, I don't think it's working, or it's not working the way I want to, when it might actually be working, but it's something else, or, the part that is not working is not what you had initially thought. And I thought that was a really interesting part of what you're able to do with these firms.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why coaching and really the emotional piece, I'm just gonna call it what it is such an important part of our business model, because I like to think I coined the phrase marketing PTSD. I have a whole video series and a blog about it. That is what law firm owners have, because they're so targeted by so many different companies, and
Right.
most of them have had at least one horrible experience where they were sold on something and it just did not deliver the results, and they didn't know any better, or sometimes it was because they didn't follow through with their part. So
Yeah.
we definitely get into that space where we can have these candid conversations one-on-one with the law firm owner and also their teams. When we do the sales and intake workshop, we have an online course that you can take on demand, which is a great start. But what we really love to do is the actual workshop, because when we do the actual workshop, we meet one-on-one and we have those conversations with the team that it's not going to happen in a team environment, right? We create a safe space for the receptionist to say, well, the reason why I'm snippy is because I've got, the paralegal asking me to do her job, and I got the lawyer being rude, and I'm the one that says, hey, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Please be nicer to her, because if she's not in a good mood,
Right.
that's going to affect your business. So
Yep.
bring her coffee, right? Make sure she's
Yeah.
in a mental space and she's connecting. She is usually it's she, connecting with the potential new customer. And we get into those spaces, and it happens because we do the coaching piece. We have coaches, like, not just me, like we have coaches on staff that are trained in mindset, in meditation, in neuro-linguistic programming, and in sales. Obviously, we have sales coaches that's what they do all day long, is just coach on sales. And and these other coaches. So with the combination of those two pieces, we're able to help with the actual staff. And one thing that's cool is, we've even had people that have gone through our workshops and our coaching that have said, oh my gosh, this is actually changing my life. Like, we had one woman a couple of months ago who was like in tears, and she was like, oh my God, I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm able to ask for what I want, like just in my life.
Right.
And this just was a result of her, hey, why aren't you asking people to pay the consultation fee with more confidence? Well, and then they get into those and again, it happens in those one-on-one coachings. And we do that with the law firm owners too. Like, we've got law firm owners that are not charging what they're worth. We work a lot with PI, where it's contingency and it's free consultation, right? But when you get to that point where you've got to tell somebody, hey, I'm an immigration attorney, Joe Schmo gives you the free consultation, the other guy gives you a $50 consultation, I'm charging you $350. Ooh, that's tricky, right? So why is that tricky? Do you not feel like your time is worth that much? And so we have those conversations with the law firm owners too, where it's about, hey, let's talk about money. Let's talk about why you have trouble asking for money. Let's talk about why people don't see your worth, because that's what you're putting out. That's like real heavy talk. Like, we've had to have those conversations with some people where they're like, nobody wants to pay me what I'm worth, and they've got the chip on their shoulder, and we're like, okay, what about you expects that? What do you mean? I don't expect that. Really? And then we dig a little deeper, and it's this pattern of, I expect to get my order wrong when I order the restaurant. I expect the dry cleaner to mess up. I expect my receptionist to book me at the wrong hotel. And I expect the customer to not want to pay the consultation. Let's take some accountability. And we do some of that work. Anyway, I can go on forever, but I bet you have.
Well, so your background is working in corporate marketing and large corporations. Like, what's your experience that you've taken from there and been able to apply it to situations like that? Like what have you brought over that you see happens in the corporate side that maybe individual law firm owners aren't doing, and that you're kind of bringing to the table?
So the biggest piece, honestly, is what led me to this that I was just talking about. But the biggest piece from corporate is making data-driven decisions. It amazes me how many law firm owners don't understand even how to use basic data, like how many impressions are they getting on social media. They're over here stressing. Like, I have people that still stress about how many Facebook followers they have, and I'm like, who cares? Like, the data, the meaning of the follower data is less than actual impressions. And these are things that to me are basic, because I worked at Nielsen, I worked at NBC, I worked at Telemundo, I've worked at all these large corporations, and they don't talk about, oh, I like this, not that. They talk about data. They talk about money. What's making us money? What does the data say we should do? That's a given. And then I go to, the brick and mortar law firm, downtown, and they're like, data. Well, I like these kinds of videos, and this is more my personality, and I like what this ad says. And I'm like, your opinion's lovely, but what does the data say? Sure. And so I'm able to redirect their attention, to benefit them, obviously, to what's really going to give them the results that they want. And that's, to me, the biggest gift of Marketing Boss to a law firm, is that we're able to take these data-driven decision-making processes that I've created proprietary methods of applying them to specific law firm processes. So rather than, Nielsen ratings data and POS data and all this other data that I'm used to working with, I'm now taking concepts that make sense for law firms, like, hey, let's look at our reach on social, or our impressions on social, versus just followers. And let's track that, and let's set a goal of growing that by 10%. That's realistic if we increase not just the volume of content, but if we increase content based on XYZ algorithms on X platform. Those are the conversations that I have with my clients, so that they're not wasting time, money, resources, and really their stress putting faith in things that they're asking for. Like, that's what's crazy. Like, a lot of these law firm owners that I work with, they used to ask for stuff that made no sense, and then they would get upset with the vendor about why it didn't work. And the vendor would happily say, oh, you want five videos a day? Well, it's going to cost you this much. I just made a sale. They don't care, right? Because they're selling the work. They're selling the labor, and I've had conversations with law firm owners like, look, you asked this social media vendor to give you this. They gave you your money's worth. But the problem is that you asked for something that made no sense. They didn't tell you, because that's not how they make their living. They make their living off of how many posts and videos they make. So let's have a conversation. What are your sales goals? What does your data look like right now as a baseline? Let's match them up to those sales goals. And if we want to increase our sales by this much, then that means we need to increase our reach, our exposure, our clicks on our campaigns by this much, and actually have some real solid numbers, so that we can then work better with our vendors. So that's what they do at Columbia Pictures. That's what they do at Nielsen. That's what they do at NBC. Everything's data. Everything's data. I remember working at NBC. I must have been like 16, 17 years old, as an intern. And I'm like, why? This is so dumb, Los Angeles. Why are we televising like stupid car chases, and police ratings?
Right.
Okay. Like, that's just what it is. So
I think there's what I'm taking away from that is, I think law firms, build their firms from the beginning on a lot of like willpower, right? And kind of gut level decision making. But then as you get to a certain stage where, you're trying to transition from doing all the work yourself to really being a manager and a leader, you have to, kind of put your bets out and then ensure that they are actually bringing back value. And it's a much more hands-off approach. And so I think it's a different type of mindset. And, which brings me to, something we talked about. Tell me a little bit more about what you consider the money mindset.
The money mindset is about really in the sales and intake space, right, is how comfortable are we asking for money or the sale or the next step? In some cases,
Mm.
it's book your consultation. In some cases, it's pay me $300, $100, whatever for the consultation. But what a lot of law firm owners don't realize is that trickles down from the top, right? If we have established value of what we do and why we're the best, and we've empowered our team to appropriate that sense of I'm the best, right? If I work at the best law firm, then that makes me the best receptionist.
Right.
That makes me the creme de la creme too. But oftentimes what happens is we have the people, I'm going to call it at the top, right? Where they're the ones making the money. It's their name on the door. And these folks that are asking for the sale are not empowered by that same sense of I'm the best.
Mm.
And I'm going to ask for what I want. And then we wonder why the phone rings and they don't answer. When it does ring and they do answer, they're just not connecting with people. It's because that money mindset from the top of scarcity is there. So it's really a scarcity thing, honestly. And it happens a lot with low level positions, or low skill workers, right? Where they have this perception of themselves, right? That is saying to them, maybe subconsciously, sometimes consciously, like, I'm not important, like, I don't command respect. And so that's what comes across on the phone. And it ends up being a reflection of the law firm. And one of the best things that law firm owners can do is to empower these people that are in those positions to really have confidence in themselves and in their future at the firm. I'm a big believer in, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're important. You're an important piece of the puzzle. We're in the middle of finishing up a customized sales and intake workshop. And one of the things that came out is, and we picked up on this through the use of language, where people were saying things like, oh, well, sometimes I'm doing my job and then I have to do her job. Because I asked, why are you so short on the phone? I'm sure there must be a reason. And she says, oh yeah, because I'm in the middle of doing my job and then I've got to do her job too. And I'm like, that's interesting. If you're a team, are you really doing her job? Or do you get to do her job? Do you get to assist your teammate with this task while she's out there doing different things? Maybe she's taking a breath because she just had a difficult conversation with somebody on the phone, right? And it's changing that mindset. And that's all tied back to money. It's value, right? When a customer or a potential new customer says, I'll get back to you, I'm not sure, that's money. Why aren't they sure? Because they're thinking twice about making that investment, so they don't see the value. They may not say the word money, but it's always about money, right? I mean, if you are calling a divorce lawyer, and you're like, you're done, and you're like, I'm going to think about it, you're probably just worried about the money, right? Am I going to have what I need to live on my own? Like, it's always about the money. It's never about the thing that you say it's about. Or when you say, oh, I'm going to take a week. Okay. And what do you think is going to change between now and a week? Then the person starts talking. Well, maybe by then I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z and be in a better fight. That's always what comes out. Like when people say, let me get back to you later. Right. And I'm using a divorce, law firm, but like immigration, same thing. Right. Like, oh, okay, great. Thanks for the information. Thanks for the consultation. They pay their $300 or $100, whatever it is. I'm going to think about it. Okay. What is there to think about? You came in here because you knew what you wanted. Like, what else you got to think about? And there's always more. And it always comes down to money. And it's, what are we putting out there about are we worth the money that we're charging? Really? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves at the law firm. Are we worth the money that we're charging? If we're not, then we better be worth it if we want to charge that. And if we are, why aren't we saying it? Why don't we believe it?
Yeah, that makes sense. When you get into these jobs, where you're coming in and kind of overhauling an intake system, what are some of the most consistent mistakes that you see with any part of it, the structure, or really anything, but just some of those things that are synonymous with law firms that are kind of under optimized when it comes to intake?
Ignoring people's feelings.
Mm.
It's literally one of the most powerful things that you can do is to pay attention to people's feelings. We believe that people make decisions based on logic, and they don't. Most decisions are emotional. If I call your law firm and Betty, who answers the phone, I feel like we're old friends because she said my name back to me. She didn't just say, can I get your first name? Can I get your last name? She says, my name's Betty. What's yours? Margarita. Okay, Margarita. I'm going to take down some information and get you exactly to what you need to do next. Just bear with me. You see the difference in that tone versus, okay, I need your first name, your last name. May you please spell your email? Like, I'm ignoring the emotion. Betty called me because she just had a car accident, or she's in the middle of a divorce, or she needs, a green card, because she's about to get deported, or whatever the legal issue is, right? And she's feeling all these emotions, and I completely ignore that. If I'm not even a legal professional and I work at the worst law firm, but I take the time to connect with Betty, and I keep saying her name. Your name's not Betty, but you're feeling the warm and fuzzies, aren't you? Because I'm saying, Betty, my name's Margarita. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to just take down some information, right? It goes a long way. And that's one of the most effective ways to get people off the market, because Betty's going to remember that I said her name over and over. She felt comfortable with me. The other thing is mirroring. Mirroring is so powerful as well. It's powerful in negotiation. It's also powerful in connection. I'm talking 30 seconds in an elevator type connection. If the caller says, I think, then I respond with, well, I think you're really going to like so-and-so. I'm going to set you up a consultation with Russell. He's the best. I think that this is exactly what you need. If the caller says, I feel like I'm just so confused, I feel so scared, I'm so happy that you called. I personally am so happy that you called, because we've helped so many people like you. And I feel like you're going to really be comfortable here. You're going to connect with our team. I'm mirroring the way the person's speaking. Now the person feels, and this is all subconscious, now the person feels a sense of familiarity with me. And those are two opportunities that most law firms miss, because we have our checklist. We got to get the first name and last name. We got to get the email. We got to qualify the case, and we got to get in, get out. And I'm not talking about adding 10 minutes to the call here either, right? It's just making these statements. I'm so glad you called. My name's blank. What's yours? And just mirroring their language. You can still do that within 5 minutes or less in most cases, right? For the initial intake, I know every firm is structured differently. Some people are like, my people are trained to take you from, the initial getting your information to sending you a contract. You can do that. It may take longer. Some people are like, I have a call center, or I have two people. All they do is answer the phone, get some surface information, and then we have a dragon or a salesperson that calls them back. Whatever your structure is, you can still follow that same formula of prioritizing connection. We teach in our workshops and, in our online course that there's three main objectives that you should always hit at every single call. And one of them is, connection. The other one is gathering information. And then the other one is building trust. So if I can build trust and connect with you and gather your information, I'm golden. I don't have to be a lawyer or a paralegal or have been working at your law firm for more than a week to be able to do those things. It's all emotional.
And do you feel like that can be trained? Because I think some people, that I've talked to in the past, come from the place of, my assistant can't do that, or I don't think they're ready to have those type of conversations. But because some of it sounds kind of, not challenging, but like, that it's either kind of a mentality someone has or they don't. But I mean, do you feel like that's been something that is totally trainable with different law firms, or are there kind of, basic fundamental pieces of a personality that really, that are needed to make be a good intake person?
That's a really good question. And I would have to say that my initial answer is yes, it can be trained, but it is something that you can train anybody to do, but it's going to take longer for some than others. Like some people are just in such a bad space, like mentally and emotionally, that we can give them all of the training and one-on-one coaching, and it's going to be years before they can get to where they need to be for that role.
Yeah.
And so what I would like to offer as an alternative to stressing about, can I train this person or not, is when you're hiring sales and intake people, yes, look for people that are detail oriented and that can sell, but also ask them questions that'll help you qualify whether they have some of the fundamental things, mindset things, right? Like what is their attitude about money? Like, how do they feel about asking for money? And you can tell by the way they negotiate their salary. If you've got somebody that, you know, that you're interviewing for a sales and intake position, and they don't at least try to negotiate with you a little bit, that's something to pay attention to, right?
Yeah.
And you may have a generous, you know, package or whatnot. So, you know, maybe there's no room to negotiate, but somebody that has the building blocks for a good like sales and intake, you know, mindset is somebody that's going to be comfortable asking for what they want. They're going to be comfortable speaking up. Hey, you've got me sending out these motions and responding and checking the mail and answering the phone. The call volume's going up a little bit too much. Can I get some help here? Right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of person that you want to keep, right? That's the kind of person that you want to like really value in that kind of position. If it's somebody that's a yes, please send me more work. Yes, give me, and just takes it. It may seem like that's great, but really, no, it's not. Because if they can't stand up to you and you're their boss and you're the safe space, how are they going to ask somebody that's objecting, you know, how are they going to overcome the objections? How are they going to be assertive, right? One thing that I hear a lot with some of these positions is, you know, do you want an appointment? Like with that insecure, you know, pay attention to their tone.
Sure.
When they do ask for something, like, are they asking you or telling you? And these are things that you can pick up on when you're interviewing people or vetting people for those types of positions. People that are comfortable asking for what they want, people that will give you feedback, right? Like actual constructive feedback, you or others. Those are the types of people that you want in that position that are very coachable, very trainable, because they're already wanting to be that way.
Yeah. What does a progression look like in your mind going from, say, a solo lawyer who, you know, has a growing business and kind of making that move from doing everything themselves, picking up all the phone calls, to, you know, what I would consider kind of the apex of the, you know, the small law firm community, where it's, you know, probably a PI firm that's got maybe multiple intake people, has a whole, you know, really well-established system. Like what's kind of the, you know, progression look like typically for organizations to develop their intake system over time?
So I'm going to give you a funny visual that if you're a parent, you'll understand.
Soon to be.
Remember when you're not going to understand, but you'll remember this.
Sure.
When you're single, or it's just you and your person, right? And you want to leave the house, you say to yourself, let's leave the house. And you grab your stuff, you put on your shoes, and you leave the house. Once you have toddlers, it's like, we're leaving the house. 20 minutes later, you went back in 5 times because somebody forgot their binky, their blanket, their shoe. And they need help with their shoes. They need help with their extra whatever. And it's like, it's chaos. And I think a lot of law firm owners that go from solo, where everything happens in their head, have a huge shock when they try to take what's in their head and assume that they can just transpose it onto what I'm going to call their children, right? I think it's such a perfect metaphor, because when you are a solopreneur and you're doing everything's happening in your head. So there's no extra steps. It's easy, right? It's more work for you, but the logistics is easy.
Yep.
When you go from being a solopreneur to having a team and outsourcing these things, if you do not slow down long enough to document things and to really think about processes that are going to work for others, not just you. And this happens in every business, not just law firms. You're going to be stressed out if you don't have that, because your employees are going to come and they're going to be like, okay, what do I do? And you're going to be like, handle the case. And they're going to be like, what CRM are we using? What, you know, and then you're going to get frustrated because now you got to like sit down and train them. and then they're going to forget something, and then you're going to have to sit down and train them again. And this is all because you didn't slow down long enough to think about your processes, document them, create onboarding materials, and then give them to your team. Instead, they're stuck. They're in a pretty shitty position too, right? They're stuck having to ask you for everything about everything, and you're stressing out because you hired these people to do the work, and now you're doing double work because you're having to think for them, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've seen this happen so many times. And the sales and intake is usually where we suffer the most. Obviously, case management too, depending on the practice area, sometimes it's trickier than others, where you really do suffer in making that shift because you thought that you were just going to leave the house and it was just going to be an extra person leaving the house with you. But no,
Right.
it's chaos. It's like, turning a corner versus steering the Titanic in another direction. It takes time. And, I think it's so important for law firm owners to understand that you have to take the time to develop processes. And this goes for your marketing and sales and intake, but also just for your operations and case management, because they bleed into each other.
Yeah.
You know?
So you think before kind of even hiring someone, say a first hire as an intake person, someone who can just be on the phones, following up with leads, stuff like that, you really want to set up your SOPs, you want to set up your operating procedure and basically have a model for them to follow. Is that kind of how I'm hearing it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be this complicated, overwhelming thing either. Like, literally, can you just take a couple hours to jot down bullet list format what is supposed to happen from the moment somebody answers the phone? What information do they have to gather? And if you can branch it out by case type, just minimum qualifying questions that anybody can ask, and document that and give that to someone, because I don't think it's a fair expectation, especially, for like a low skill person that's not a legal professional, to expect them to know, to ask, were you given a citation after your accident? Like, they don't know that.
Right.
That because you're a PI attorney. They're not going to know that. You can't assume that you have to write it down somewhere, like, look for these 5 things and then move it to the next step and then further qualify. And that's something that I see a lot, especially with the solopreneur size that's trying to scale and delegate, where they just don't have that documented anywhere. And people struggle to do a good job, even with the best training, because they don't have those resources.
That makes sense. Some of the things that I've seen have a big impact on just efficiency of intake is things like intake software. So having somewhere to manage your pipeline, just it kind of surprised me talking with some clients about how they organize incoming leads, and it's basically sticky notes, right? So software, potentially having an answering service after hours so that you're not so you always have someone on. Are there other kind of components like that you that come to your mind when thinking about what you would put into like an essential intake system package?
Well, I think it's tricky because as a marketer, I focus on the marketing aspect. And then obviously, as somebody that cares about ROI, I look at the lead aspect. So let me explain a little bit more about what I mean. So most law firms have like a MyCase or a Clio or some sort of legal software where they can put in leads that they want to follow up with, right? But as a marketer, I'm always like, well, what about the ones that we're not sure if they're even qualified, or that we know they're not qualified and we want to refer them out or stay in touch or whatnot? What then, right? So what I always want to encourage law firm owners to think about is have a strategy for how you're going to follow up with qualified leads, but also unqualified leads, right? That maybe their case type is outside of your area, because there's a saying that the average funeral is about 250 people and the average wedding is about 250 people, which means that most of us know 250 people. So if you took the time to acquire me as a lead, even if I'm not a qualified case, you might as well keep me in your network, because I'm going to know somebody that needs a PI attorney, immigration attorney, or somebody, right? So you might as well develop that relationship. And why not do it through automation? Why not put them into a, email marketing or a text message marketing, and add them to a, what I like to call a know, like, and trust series, like some sort of content that lets you know more about us, and, why you should like us, and what are some, stories that we can share with you, or case studies, etc., so that we can stay in touch, send you a happy birthday text, all of those things. So software wise, I have not found one robust software that can take care of all those areas. Most case management systems have some sort of lead pipeline, type thing. And then others would be like a CRM for marketing. So it's always what I find, it's usually two separate. So one of the things that we do at Marketing Boss is we help bring in programmers that can help integrate your system so that it's like a seamless thing for your team. Another band-aid solution, which, you and I have discussed, is sometimes it's nice, even if it's just tracking the phone calls within the actual phone call tracking system, to have some sort of tagging system or some sort of note system, so that we can track how many of those leads converted, where did they come from, and, for the ones that didn't convert, like, how are we planning to follow up? And there's some sort of accountability, or like a log of everything that's come in. For law firms, usually the call tracking software is a nice happy medium. Like, if you don't have your email CRM integrated with your case management CRM yet, at minimum, you can have some sort of sense of what's happening with all your leads by creating these systems inside your call tracking system. Unless you're crazy and you don't have a call tracking system, and then it's like, why? You might as well, right? I don't understand law firms that don't have that.
Well, it's interesting. Do you have have you encountered firms, and what do you say to firms who are reluctant to use dynamic number insertion, which is geeky term for call tracking, with it, because they say, well, people, they want to know my number, I have a special number, or whatever the rationale is, but they're afraid to let go of that for the tracking purpose. What do you say to them?
So there's two things. If you really want to use your vanity number on everything, that's cool. Then just be willing to pay for the labor to still track calls and still audit them audibly. Like, now you've got to pay somebody to listen and to try to figure out what the source was, right?
Yeah.
Worst case scenario. But the biggest thing is this idea of the vanity number, right? The 1-800, call your best lawyer, whatever, right? People on digital don't care. Like, they just see the ad and they click. Like, they really don't care what the number is. So it's better to just use a dynamic number and know where that lead came from. Don't be afraid that the person's gonna, not know that you're the, 222 billboard guy, right?
Right.
Which brings me to my next point. Vanity numbers are great for billboards and flyers and, things that are printed, maybe even TV commercials. But for the most part, you can get away with using dynamic track numbers on just about any digital asset, from your ads, your website, Google My Business. I love having data from, CallRail, or I forget what the one that you and I were talking about is, where you can actually see what actual page they converted from on your website.
Yeah.
That's really
we actually, the last podcast I did was actually the owner of that company, What Converts.
Okay.
Getting into the details of attribution. And I've actually heard another pushback on the number tracking, which was that, basically when someone comes in, they'll see one number, but then when we call them back, it'll be a different number, and it creates this big mess of confusion. But I feel like that can be kind of easily remedied in the intake system process, when basically you come back and just say, hey, write down this number. This is our best number. Like, we track, we have other, you might have seen another number, something like that. Do you ever encounter that?
Yeah. And oh my God, such a simple solution. We can communicate with our clients
Right.
about what our main number is. Problem solved. You'd be amazed, like, how many customers are very understanding, because we live in a digital marketing age. When they become your client, and you say to them, okay, by the way, you might have called us at one number. I might have called you from another number. This is the number that I want you to save on your phone. It's our client number or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, easy. I'll give you a minute while you do that. Okay, easy fix.
Right.
Takes a couple minutes. And why throw out the baby with the bathwater? Why am I going to lose data on what's working, how it's working, where it's coming from, you know, just so that I don't have to have the inconvenience of explaining that to a new client?
Yeah. Well, it seems like once, you know, if you can accomplish some of these other things through training and you kind of break the, you know, figure out that the solution to that, then, you know, it's like a superpower, right? You can apply that same ability to train and, you know, create those SOPs and get people all marching in the same direction. And it's really not a big problem once you break it down like that.
And speaking of training too,
Yeah.
a lot of law firm owners are afraid to train their customers.
Mhm.
I have a wonderful testimonial from an immigration lawyer in California, and I adore what she said because she proved me right. I've had so many immigration lawyers that work with Spanish speakers say to me, oh, I don't want to do email marketing. Hispanics don't have an email address. And so they would try to get the email address, and the person on the phone would be like, oh, no tengo, like I don't have one, right? And because they already put that out there, so it's kind of like they weren't even expecting it, and they weren't assertive with that. She was like, I built my entire law firm, all my marketing is in Spanish, and everybody has an email. Whenever they try to work with me and tell me I don't have an email, I tell them, okay, give me the same email you used to create your Facebook account. I know you have a Facebook account because that's how you found me. Oh,
Right.
yeah, there's that one.
Yeah.
She trained her customers. She didn't accept the pushback. And I
Yep.
think as law firm owners, sometimes we accept the pushback more than we need to. No, train them. They have an email address. They can save a different number on their phone. You can explain a lot of that stuff away.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And I really like, you know, how you've positioned yourself and just what you're bringing to the law firms as far as, you know, just I think unwillingness to be at status quo, right? And you know, sometimes I've gotten into these situations with you know, clients or other people where you know, we're confident we're delivering value, but they're not set up to properly utilize it, and so it ends up being, you know, they leave and it's not good for anybody, you know, and we feel, you know, frustrated, and I'm sure they do too when, you know, I think some of this can be settled out in, you know, with through communication and through proper training. And you know, you've been very gracious with your time. I wanted to see if I could get one more question in about, you know, you've talked a lot about data, and I think for a lot of lawyers, that probably, you know, immediately like they go, you know, ready to go to sleep when they hear that, right?
I went to law school to not do math.
What's that?
I went to law school to not do math, right?
Yeah, for sure. But I think what I was like, you know, going through, I think what I was what stuck out to me, you know, is what you were describing with like call tracking systems, like what converts or call rail. Like data doesn't have to be, you know, this like super complicated thing where you're analyzing spreadsheet, you know, a bunch of spreadsheets and doing you know, qualitative analysis or anything. Like literally the kind of data I think that you're talking about is really just looking at, you know, getting some accountability with the results, right? And it can be as simple as, you know, going through your list of calls and figuring out where they came from, or even figuring out, you know, which of those actually became clients, and then trying to make some assumptions or conclusions about where those people came from, just so you're better informed. It's like, you know, I don't think your goal is to turn any of the, you know, your clients into like data scientists. I think it's just more about showing them where to look and what to look for, and that can have a huge impact on their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're the data analysts. Like that's what they hire us for. We'll do all that boring data analysis for you and give you the top level highlights. But as far as an owner, day-to-day stuff that you can use, absolutely. Just audit your calls every once in a while and get a sense of where are your calls coming from. Just poke around, right? You don't have to sit there for hours. You can just poke around, get a bird's eye view, as long as you kind of sort of know what you're looking at, and go from there. And the same thing with social. We did a workshop the other day about auditing your law firm, and everybody was all like overwhelmed, like, oh gosh, she's going to pull out spreadsheets. And I was like, hey, open up your Instagram and check to see on average, your top views that you've gotten on a video. What is it? And what's the lowest one? Okay, now come up with a number somewhere in the middle and aim for that every time you post a reel. Yeah. Like, it can be simple. You can just look for certain trends with whatever software you've got. If you've got a call tracking system, great. If you've got a website, you probably have data on how many visitors you have. That's helpful to know. Are they going up or down? You're posting 4 blogs, 5 blogs, whatever, is that bringing you more traffic? Are you getting more phone calls?
Yeah.
Your website, then okay, that's data to look for. Simple.
Makes sense. I think it has such a big impact too, once kind of everybody's moving in the same direction, both marketing team, law firm, and everybody's kind of on the same page as to what metrics we're actually looking at and which ones matter the most. And I think with that, there can be a lot less animosity between the two groups. So when we when I work on the PTSD retreat for lawyers for marketing, I'll be sure to holler at you. But really appreciate your time, and I got a lot of really good information, from what you've shared. And so where can folks find you? I know you've got a website, you're doing workshops, you're doing a bunch of different stuff. Maybe you can just share the best place to reach out to you, and how they can kind of connect with you and get started with some intake process help, or whatever they might be needing with their firm.
Right. So I love connecting on social media. So Instagram, Margarita Eberline, LinkedIn, same thing, TikTok. On Facebook, I'm Margie Eberline. That's my nickname. But everywhere else, it's Margarita Eberline. And I love connecting on social media. Just DM me. I'm very much a one-on-one person. And then my website is, you can get there by marketing-boss.com, or my name, Margarita Eberline. Those are some ways to get connected. And I love sharing content, and I hope that it's entertaining for my law firm clients, because I sure have a lot of fun making it. And it's definitely a part of our brand and our culture is to, just have fun, live our best lives, connect with our clients, and, make money, help them make money. So,
yeah. Right. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time, and we'll have to do it again, and we can cover some other topics for lawyers. So thank you so much, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you.